economic and political environment for this transition was proper, was propitious, much better than what we have, for example, now for some countries aspiring to build up a democratic, liberal, market-oriented system. So let's start with this determination of early reformers. When you read about Poland of that time, one term comes to the front, which is Big Bang. Was it really a Big Bang? Well, it was, and it was not. In what sense it was? It was because some things were done very early on in the new period. Prices were liberalized and basically were put in order. Very important for an economist, because price system is the system that provides correct information. If you have prices wrong, you have wrong information, wrong incentives to do, which was very important, even if socially difficult. What else? Well, state companies were deprived of systematic subsidies that they were enjoying in the previous system. It was very harsh, but it was, in a sense, the essence of transition. Because if a little bit later those state-owned enterprises got into trouble and many went bankrupt, terrible from social point of view, but it was freeing up resources, the people, the capital, management, and most important, freeing the market space for new companies. And number three, we Poles have decided to open up the economy. So this provided for this famous, or for some infamous, Big Bang. However, there was no Big Bang in institutional evolution. There was no mass privatization, like the Kuponowka in the Czech and Slovak, like in Czechoslovakia, or the infamous mass privatization which in Russia or in the Soviet Union at that time. I mean, the result of this mass privatization was not so much, was corporate mess in Czechoslovakia and oligarchy in post-Soviet republics. We avoided this. We started building institutions like tax system, capital market, anti-monopoly office, and the likes. And it was done step by step. So we didn't get into one swoop, let's say, Big Bang institutional change, but an orderly process of building institutions. And also, which is now not frequently remembered, as far as inflation, fighting inflation, it was also rather a policy of softening hard budget constraints. Instead, like in Germany, you stepped in, the GDR stepped into this, a new system with the Westmark, with the Western mark. We have allowed the Polish zloty to devalue at some speed, basically softening the situation for Polish producers. Well, the cost of it was that inflation was still double-digit after 10 years of transition. However, when it was, so we had really a second big bang imposed by the Central Bank of Poland in the years 1999, 2000, 10 years after the beginning of transition, that brought down inflation to something like 2%. And it remains 2%, 2.5% until today. So this is the Big Bang. But the Big Bang itself, well, the Big Bang is probably a misnomer. It was Big Bang when it was necessary, and it was a gradualistic, well-conceived institution building when necessary and possible. One issue, one factor that I would like to reiterate, to stress, is this European dimension of the Polish transition, which doesn't exist, for example, in Ukraine. As early as 1991, we have signed something which may be called association agreement with the then EU. And since something like 1995, we have aligned all our laws, all our regulations with the acquis communautaire as early as 1995. So it took us 10 years to enter European Union. Well, so this is how we did it. Nobody did it before. We didn't know how to do it. It's only Leszek Balcerowicz who, at least he could pretend that he knew what to do it, but he did it. Then 27 years of uninterrupted growth followed. And then in 2015, the democratic forces lost politically. And this was a shock. And there are many explanations. As an economist, I obviously try to look for economic explanations. Like, for example, well, we are normally instinctively looking for income disparities. Well, yes, of course, they increased, at least in formal terms, but Poland was one of the few countries in Europe when income disparities actually were dropping recently, especially because of the EU membership. Well, I think that economists cannot give you a good explanation of this setback, of this political setback. I think it sticks deeper in the mental sphere. Probably we have gone through too much change in this 25 years. 25, not 30, in this 25 years. And the people simply got used to all the good things that happened and were more, let's say, sensitive to the deficiencies, to the obvious deficiencies that were developed. I don't think that what happened in Poland after this 20-something years can be explained by the global wave away from liberal democracy towards something that can be called creeping autocracy. Because in Poland it happened first. And you can look at the United States and you can see the material reasons for what has happened 3 years ago. I don't see those clear reasons in Poland. But I'm not going to answer this question because I have made a sort of a basic assumption that we economists cannot find a good explanation for this. The economy, by the way, is doing great, or at least quite well. The Polish economy proved to be incredibly resistant to generous social policies that were developed in the last 4 years. As a matter of fact, something that we are not criticized for by international community. To the contrary, it's something that is called a success. There is a lot of microeconomic tinkering in Poland, something that is finally undermining the microeconomic foundations of the economy. I'm not going into details. However, the economy is still going on. The catching up process is not unbroken. We can see problems, very serious problems, but so far, everything is good. It's very difficult to criticize the new authorities on economic grounds, especially if you want to get with the message to, let's say, to the society, not to the elites, to the experts, to the societies. If everything is fine, then why bother? We should continue. Of course, we economists know that it is finite. It's not a sustainable solution. But people are not worried about sustainability. That's the problem. So, with this not entirely optimistic note, I am closing my remarks on the otherwise incredible success, economic and social and civilizational success of Polish transition. Thank you. So, it took me 15 minutes, so.
That's okay. Well, any questions to the Mr. Belka? Yeah.
Very short and precise question. What have been the dynamics of Poland's sovereign debt since 2015?
What was the dynamic?
Dynamics of the sovereign debt of Poland.
You know, one lesson that we have learned during the crisis of 2008-2010 was that you should look both at the level of public debt and private debt. Because in many cases, private debt can turn easily into public debt. Like in Ireland, Iceland, Spain, or Latvia. So, Poland is, when you look at both public and private debt, Poland is one of the least indebted countries in Europe. The size of both public and private debt is about 110% of GDP. Compare it with Germany, compare it with France, it gets up to 300, 350. Of course, the public debt is, by European standards, pretty low. It's about 50%. We would like to be like Estonia, 15, 10, 5, whatever. But Estonia started from scratch, and we started with a big public debt inherited from the previous system. This is one, but the overall low level of indebtedness in the economy, private and public, makes Polish economy relatively resistant, crisis-proof, you may say. This was also one of the reasons why Poland didn't fall into recession in 2008-9. You know, different from all the countries of the European Union, simply because we had a relatively low backlog of private and public debt. Of course, private debt, this is a constant fight. What is the private debt, the public debt? Is it the explicitly recorded public debt, or is it the implicit public debt, which is the accumulated claims of future retired persons? Well, then the numbers are completely different. But even there, this implicit public debt in Poland is slower than in most countries of Western Europe.
But just continue this question, which is very interesting one on the debt. We know that Poland has its own currency, and Poland is not in the Eurozone. I started to realize that when a country is getting in a Eurozone, and in a zone generally, the debt is increasing up, you have to oblige to increase your debt also. But for the case of Poland, really, I'm in full agreement that relatively that is not so big. Do you have a comment on that? Do you think that was the reason you didn't join the Eurozone? One of the reasons was the management of the debt. It is the case.
No. Look at most countries in Eastern or Central and Eastern Europe who joined the Eurozone. Nothing dramatic happened, neither with the price level nor with the debt level. This is different. I think that well, first there is this argument that in Poland, the fact that we're outside Euro helped us to get through the first wave of the crisis in 2008-9. This looks nice, but it's not true. No. Well, indeed, in 2008, the zloty depreciated, helping the Polish exporters to survive the crisis. Even if our exports to Germany fell by 25%, in zloty terms, the proceeds from exports didn't fall. So there was no reason to fire sell assets, to shed labor, nothing like this. We kept on going, at least for a moment. And then the zloty returned to more normal level. However, before this happened, before the crisis of 2008, zloty unnaturally strengthened in the preceding 2 years, and it was nothing strange. A lot of foreign capital flew in. Remember Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, but they had pegged currencies, so they didn't feel it that way. But zloty is strengthened by, well, the natural level of the exchange rate. Zloty euro used to be 4.2, something like this, throughout the whole 20 years. It went up or went down, no matter, well, it depends on what you, to 3.2. And for the dollar, it went from 4 to 2 zloty per dollar. Why it happened? Was it good for the Polish economy? Was it good for exports? Well, you may look at it from different points of view, but because we were not in the Eurozone, there was a big inflow of carry trade driven capital. That is why we have this problem, mostly a social and political than economic problem of foreign currency denominated mortgage credits in the banks. Within the euro, we wouldn't have this. And we wouldn't have such a major strengthening of zloty before, in the run-up to the crisis. Without this strengthening, we wouldn't have this weakening. It was a bubble that just was pricked. So, yes, of course, in 2008 it helped us, but because it worked in the opposite direction before. Now, there is no bubble. There is no increased capital inflow to Poland. So if we had another crisis like 2008, which I don't foresee, we would not have another type of major zloty adjustment, defensive devaluation. So this is an illusion. This is an illusion, but I must say that I have been a victim to this illusion too, to some extent. Not entirely, but I used to use this argument. I changed my view. I was sort of, after looking what happened in the Eurozone in 2010-12, I thought, well, we shouldn't rush. Now I'm looking at the policy, at the economic policy of this government, I say, well, we should rush.
Another question?
Yes, many thanks for your interesting intervention. You are also a pro-European Polish politician. So my question is, how do you define the possible role of Poland regarding the project of European integration?
Well, it's an evergreen. We are discussing this issue in Poland from the very beginning, and of course our ambition is to be in the core. But because we, as a country now, basically desert most of the European projects, starting from Euro, or even banking union, up to the problem of immigration. Nobody in Poland, and basically nobody, probably not many in this room, are enthusiastic about this sharing quota thing like this. But that's not about it. It's about the main approach towards immigration, towards a very ambivalent approach to common security issues. Of course, we are an outlier in the Green Deal issues. So all this puts Poland more on the margin than in the core of the European Union. I think that this is wrong. This is not only wrong; it's a disaster. I think our government does not have a foreign policy at all. The elements of, I mean, I cannot call it a coherent policy. Also, I think that Poland is losing a big potential, historically important role as one of the countries that could be, let's say, leading Europe. It's not because of Polish economic potential we are sort of comparable with the Netherlands, but it's because of our role in the central and in the Central European part of Europe. We could be probably, well, our political role could be much more important, especially after Brexit. But the government is ambivalent. They know that the people are staunchly pro-European. I don't know how deep it is, but they are staunchly pro-European. Any party that wants to win the election in Poland cannot be against the euro, against the European integration, the EU. But, you know, the resistance towards the euro now is more of a political character than economic character. Because everybody knows that if you are in the eurozone, you have to support the ever-deepening integration. No matter how we call it, euro is a powerful driver of integration. And they don't want it.
Any question? Last one, please.
How
Wait.
do you see the economic situation? Thank you. How do you see the economic situation under the current government as compared to the democratic government in the past?
Economic policy is, in my opinion, probably the least controversial part of their policies. I mean, I would prefer to criticize them first on foreign policy. I mean, it's devastating. Dismantling of rule of law, education. As far as economic policy is concerned, I must say that here it's very easy for me to divide this into macro and micro. As far as microeconomic policy, structural policies, policy towards energy, policy towards banking, towards public service, it's very, very bad. It's daily undermining of microeconomic foundations of Polish economy. But this works in longer term. You cannot, I mean, if the economy is growing, if the international environment is allowing, you can live with, let's say, public banks or nationalized banks. The only problem begins when you start looking for funds to modernize the energy sector. Then you will not find anyone from the private sector, from the private banking sector around the world to wish to invest in Polish energy sector. Then there will be a temptation on the part of the government to put pressure on the state banks to provide money, which is a bad investment. This is how this microeconomic devastation comes into the fore. Macroeconomic, I think that they are more realistic here, and they have one thing to do: increase taxes, and they will do it. They will present it as a, let's say, redistribution instrument, but from macroeconomic point of view, again, on the longer term, higher taxes is not good. But if you want to prevent too big a deficit, you increase taxes. So I'm not worried about macro. I'm worried maybe about longer term effects of these policies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.